keyboard, that's very clear. Acoustic instruments versus electric instruments, and then electric versus electronic. Want me to clarify electric versus electronic, perhaps?
Go right ahead.
Sure. So electric means that the parts that cause the sound are actually moving, right? So there's actual movement of parts in the instrument, and that causes the sound. Now, like electronic means that you don't have that, but you do have some kind of electrical current input, but it's all digital, if you will.
Yeah, okay. Like an electric guitar is, of course, electric, and electronic could be a keyboard, for example.
Brilliant, indeed, because in the guitar you still have the strings vibrating, so there's still some movement of parts for the sound. Percussion instrument, of course, and idiophone, membranophone are distinctions within the percussion section. I probably need to make this clear. So an idiophone resonates, the whole instrument resonates, and membranophone means that just the membrane resonates, and that produces the sound. So that's the difference. Form then, structural densification.
No idea, man.
That was what I was hoping for, actually, because this is quite a less common concept. So structural densification means that the structure gets denser. But I'll elaborate on that. So that means that, for example, there will be more motives horizontally at one point, right? So at one point in time, you will get more parts. So for example, you're playing the guitar, and all of a sudden I start playing the bass at the same time. That could be a densification of structure. But you could also have that you've been playing slow notes all the time, and all of a sudden you're playing faster notes and faster, and your rhythmical figures get smaller note values. So it becomes much more compact in a vertical sense, or you get more motives and it becomes much more compact in a vertical sense, and that's also structural densification. So that's structural densification for you. Pascalia, which would mean that you have some kind of a baseline, and on top of that you would have a variation. Pretty common in jazz music, just some walking bass, right? And on top of that you improvise. Tutti, of course, means everyone. Concerto is something important, which means you have a piece for multiple instrumentalists, and there is at least one, or there are multiple clear instrumentalists that have a solo role in the piece. Piano concerto, of course, being the piano, because being the concert, which is with main solo role for the piano. Variation form is a type of form where you have one kind of a motive, and then you get a variation on it, and you get another variation on the same motive, and another one, and that continues basically. So you have one basic motive, and then you get a series of variations on that first motive. So you could describe that in musical form as A accent, a double accent, a triple accent, etc. Rondophone, of course, being that you will keep getting back to the same thing, like a round object, like a circle, therefore rondo. So you would get A, B, A, C, A, D, A, B, I don't care. You will keep getting back at the A. That's what makes it a rondo. So very much like ELP's rondo as well, of course. So far so clear?
Yep.
Brilliant. Tempo then, accelerando, ornaments, trill, which is tailor in Dutch. Mordant, the term, we call it dubbelslag, dus ik zou het ook wel I might accidentally call it dubbelslag, but I think I've corrected myself at least in the slide, so I will probably refer to it as term, but do remember that word, dubbelslag. So if I say dubbelslag, you will keep remembering it's a term. Ghost notes, of course, and tremolo. Fun fact, ghost notes are also called ghost notes in Dutch, so there you have it. Some more rhythm, that's the final bit of the music theoretical terms we need. So we have different kinds of measures, of course. You can have a 4/4, or a 2/4, or a 3/4, or a 16/8. You can have a lot of rhythmical measures, and you can divide them into different sections, right? So you can have simple measures and compound measures. Simple ones being meaning that there is either 3 or 2 notes in the measure, per bar. And compound mean that there are more, because if there are more, you will have to get distinctions into groups of notes, of either groups of 2 notes or groups of 3 notes, and that will cause you to have, besides the main accent, also different other accents at the beginning of each group on the first note in the group. So then we have duple and triple. That's another distinction between measures, which means that either for compound measures, that either the amount of groups is divisible by 2 or the amount of groups is divisible by 3, right? So if you have 2 equal groups or 4 equal groups or 6 equal groups, that would be duple. Or you can have triple. You can have 3 groups, then that would be triple. You can have 6 groups, that would be triple, something like that. Then of course there's the idea of complex measures, and that would mean that you would have unequal groups. So then you would have a group of 2 and a group of 3 in one bar. So for example, a 5/4 would have a group of 2 and a group of 3, or a group of 3 and a group of 2. And that would mean that the groups have unequal numbers in how many notes there are in each group, and that would of course cause it to be irregular. So we call that complex in English. The other word being regelmatig in Dutch, so onregelmatig, regelmatig, regular, irregular. You have the word complex for irregular, but you don't really have any special word for designating, well, what I would call in Dutch, we do have a word for it, the regular bars. So I will just call them regular, but I don't think there's an English term. I wasn't able to find it anyway. So far so good.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And now we get to the real fun, because now we can finally get to the analysis. So we get a general analysis. There is no polytonality in the piece. Never, and I have scrutinized the piece, never ever are there 2 keys at the same time that are not the same key in the different instruments. Polymetric, also not. There is not one time in the piece that there are multiple measures at the same time. But there is a lot of polyrhythm in it. So that means that you have both rhythmical structures and, metrical structures and, or metrical figures and antimetrical figures at the same time, or tuples. So for example, you would get a triplet, and then at the same time you would have in a 2/4 bar, for example, 2 fourths. So then one bar would be metrical and the other bar would be antimetrical. So, and that at the same time would be polyrhythm, because you have multiple rhythms at the same time. And this is interesting. Even though there's no polytonality, there were a lot of keys I've been able to find in the piece, so that's brilliant. There's 13 different keys. That's a crazy amount of keys. And I'm not talking about them appearing once, they're appearing multiple times, so we have even more modulations. It's crazy. So here you have an idea of the keys. Of course, the first impression is the longest impression, so it has most of these. It does make sense. Second impression has clearly more than the third, and the second impression, of course, is more difficult than the third and more virtuoso, so that also makes sense. 7 different for the first, 6 for the second, and 4 for the third. Or can you see it at the back row? Ah, yes, you can. Brilliant. So the keys we've had here, you can see them on the screen, right? And I'll send to you the slides afterwards, so you can look them back up if you find that interesting. So you have minor scales, and you have you have minor keys, and you have major keys, and you have flats, and you have sharps. There's a lot of diversity, there really is. And we will find that there's even more diversity when we move on to the actual sequence of keys and modulations in the piece, which is, my god, it looks chaotic, and it is chaotic. I try to make sense of it. It is very, if you're going to hear my explanations for some of the modulations, you might think that it doesn't make any sense. Now please think that that's very likely to be true. I mean, they were inventing a new genre at the time. It's 1973, I believe, right? So of course they were just messing about and finding interesting, complicated stuff. But just theoretically, if you try to make sense of it, perhaps this is a way to make sense of what happens. So the first impression has 23 modulations. We start off with a G sharp minor and we move on to an A flat. So in order to explain that, I would say the initial tone of the key, so the first tone, so the tonic, I think it's in English, or the prime, is enharmonically equal in both keys. So that could be a reason to switching between the keys. Next we move from A flat to E to A flat to C sharp minor. And you can see the modulation sequences by the bars on top of them as well, the ones I'm discussing. Now if you want to understand that, it looks a lot more chaotic, right? Because A flat, E, that would be, looking at it from the perspective of E, that would be like a third, but not really, because E has sharps, right? So E would have a G sharp from an A flat. So that's very odd. Now we can make some sense of it actually. If we interpret the A flat as a G sharp, because G sharp major is enharmonically the same in the entire scale, or key, to A flat major. So if we interpret it like that, we would have G sharp, E, G sharp, C sharp minor. And then it all starts to make sense, right? Because moving from G sharp to E, that's a third. From E to G sharp is a third. And then from G sharp to C sharp minor would be, I'm not sure what the English words is, but it's the dominant anyway, right? It's the dominant. C sharp, G sharp, that's the dominant. So that's 5-1. So that makes a lot of sense as a progression. And what makes even more sense is that you move to C sharp minor. And the first chord in C sharp minor, so the first, I think it's called scale degree in English. Yeah, scale degree. So the first scale degree in C sharp minor is of course C sharp, E, G sharp. So then you would have a broken chord in a sense in these modulations between keys. Now we move on to A flat, to E and to C sharp. We will just interpret that in the same way. So enharmonically the same scale, interpret A flat as a G sharp. If you do that, it all makes sense, right? You move from C sharp minor to G sharp, that's again the dominant. Then you move to E, that's of course the median. And then you move to C sharp, and that's of course your tonic or tonica, so, or prime. So that's a 5, a 1-5, and a 5-3, and a 3-1. And we move to major there because we move from C sharp minor to C sharp. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Actually, no, this is not where it gets interesting. This is actually the part where it makes sense. It finally starts to make sense. Because we move from C sharp to A, which is a third, right? That's the connection. And from A to F sharp, which is also a third, to C sharp minor, which is not a third, but I can explain that as well. Because if you get the modulations from these keys, and let's look at these keys, C sharp, A, F sharp. Now make a chord on F sharp, the initial chord. So the first scale degree would be F sharp, right? Now F sharp is F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. So the only problem being, this is an A on A sharp. Well, we can explain that because we are moving towards C sharp minor. And C sharp minor goes the same way as E major. So we have 4 crosses, F sharp, G sharp, C sharp, and D sharp. No A sharp. So no A sharp, yes A. So that would make sense to fit in this key, to have this be an F sharp minor chord. So that does kind of make sense, right? It's a bit possibly, I agree, but you can make sense of it that way.